It's Divas That Care Radio. Stories, strategies, and ideas to inspire positive change. Welcome to Divas That Care, a network of women committed to making our world a better place for everyone. This is a global movement for women, by women, engaged in a collaborative effort to create a better world for future generations. To find out more about the movement, visit divasthatcare.com after the show. Right now, though, stay tuned for another jolt of inspiration.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Divas That Care. My name is Candace Gish. Wow, if this is your very first time tuning into the Divas That Care, a huge welcome. We're so excited that you joined us. The Divas That Care is now in its 12th season. We are listened to in over 30 countries around the world, so we are always excited when new people check us out. For any of you that are tuning back into the program, thank you so much. Make sure that you are one of those amazing people that share, like, and comment on all of our programs because we really appreciate that. We love supporting all the amazing guests that come onto our program, and we love supporting all of our hosts. So if you haven't checked out all of our hosts, make sure you go to divasthatcare.com and check out all of our amazing hosts. You're going to love their programs. All right, everybody, I'm excited to be welcoming back one of our amazing guests. She has been very inspirational in the things that I'm learning in my life. I just love listening to her. You know, you're going to have to check out all of her videos that she does out there, and she's got some great books. And I just, as I said, I really love having her and having the ability to chat with her. My amazing guest today is Phyl Macomber. And Phyl, welcome back to the Divas. I'm so happy to chat with you again today.
I am so thrilled for our conversation today, and you're just such a blessing in my life. I am so grateful for you and the work that you do that's really making a difference.
Oh, thank you so much. And I love the tribe of individuals that we know together and just being able to collaborate. It's so much fun. And you know what? You're just an amazing woman. As I said, I just love chatting with you all the time. So, Phyl, for any of our new listeners that don't know who you are, would you mind introducing yourself to them?
Sure. I have served in the field of education since 1988. So at the time of this recording, that's like 34 years. It's kind of hard to imagine. And my trajectory in my journey of making a difference resulted in being an author in the field of education. I've created a 4-step teaching framework that simplifies learning and simplifies teaching. And at the current time, most people kind of view me as, again, being in education and the guru in education. And I'm very humbled by that. But also, what I'm excited to talk about is the brain is the brain, whether you're a child or whether you're a young adult or you're an adult, you know, right in the middle of your career and wanting to move forward in the workplace. And so I'm excited to discuss strategies related to being successful.
I love that. We all need that.
We sure do, because, you know, we're not mind readers, right? I mean, sometimes I will interact with people and I'll say to them, you know, I'm happy to follow the rules. I just need to know what the rules are. You know, I can't read people's mind. And kids feel the same way in school. We can't just assume knowledge. We could assume competency. That we need to assume, that everyone is competent, has the ability to learn and be successful, whether they're a child or an adult. But we need to be able to explicitly teach to improve performance, whether that's in the classroom or the boardroom.
I love that. And it's so important because everybody learns differently. And if we're not explaining things properly, they're not going to understand that. And you know what? I've seen that with my children and how people talk to them when they were in school and they didn't understand. And it's just, you're right. It's explaining that simple thing, and it works throughout our entire lives.
It does. Yeah, whether we ourselves are accessing education at a higher level, whether it's in a trade school or a college, university, or even a job training program, right?
Exactly. And I like how you were just mentioning that even in a boardroom, there's so many miscommunications within boards that it makes things very challenging when things aren't explained in the communication, misinterpretation of a lot of things that could be easily fixed.
Right. You know, and I interact a lot, of course, in the field of education and also with school boards. So this also could be applying to some of your community service as an adult in terms of what we're talking about today.
So tell us, what is the secret solution? I know that was going to be our big topic today, and I'm really excited to be learning more about that.
Well, I think to start with, we should just briefly discuss really how the brain works, because we've been referencing it for the past couple minutes, right, Candace? So how about I just do it down and dirty? We need to present things to anybody in the way that our brains best learn, understand, and process information so that we then can demonstrate that knowledge and share it out. And it's not 50 steps. It's too much for a child or an adult to go through that kind of process. It's really 4 steps. And these 4 steps are learn, read, write, talk. The learn and read is the understanding and processing the information and making it stick in your brain, right? And the write and talk is showing that what you learned and read about. And this can apply to the workplace, which is what we're discussing today. And I'm excited to just give some real specific examples as to how this can work in the workplace.
I really like that. I think that our listeners are going to really appreciate that. And I think, we are talking about the workplace, but things have changed so much. And a lot of people started working from home. A lot of people, just different dynamics of situations now. And how important, because before we kind of dive into everything, how important is that even more so now to be able to communicate properly?
So important. And also to be present. I always say your brain needs to be in the group, right? Because many people, like you said, are working remotely, myself included. I mean, even pre-pandemic, I've worked remotely because I work in so many different locations geographically. But so I already had systems in place for that. But so many times you're in a meeting and people are sharing their videos, whether it's in Zoom or a Google Meet or, GoToMeeting, whatever format you use, and they're looking down at their phones. They turn their video off. You could tell they're multitasking, and then they're called on to participate, and they're not up to speed about what's being discussed. And being present and focusing on the conversation is, first of all, the very first step, because you need to be present, right? When I compare this to education, I will say in elementary school, okay, we're in science class and we're learning about owls of North America. That means our brain is thinking about owls, not about recess, right?
I love it.
It's like focus. We need to focus. And we need to teach focus. I don't think focus is an automatic thing for a lot of people.
No, I don't think so. I think that people are so overwhelmed with what's going on around them that it's hard to keep on topic.
Right. Yeah. In the support that I do with people, I have a phones down rule. Unless it's related to you have a sick child or an emergency with a family member or whatever, it's please turn your phone upside down, because we all get those alerts on our phone, myself included. Right? I get alerts from CNN and BBC and, Facebook and, all my social media outlets. I am not looking at my phone when I am present, supporting people and leading them, because if they have Phyl, they have 100% of Phyl. They don't have 50% of Phyl or 75% of Phyl. And so I think that setting up easy ways for people to focus on what they need to focus on and understand this process, like the 4 steps I mentioned, learn, read, write, talk, that's the ticket in.
I love that. And I want to say, too, just being present, and it shows people respect and that you appreciate them. And it's something that has always been drilled into my head that, be present when you are in a situation, but it shows respect and everything else along with it.
It's so true. Do you know that the research shows that when you're in conversation with someone and you're in the position of listening because they're speaking to you, 80% of the people are not focusing on what the other person is saying. They're focusing on what they plan to say next. Isn't that unbelievable?
It's kind of sad, I think.
It is. It's remarkable that people are not active listening, right? That, there's a big difference between hearing and listening. Hearing is just bringing that in, and you could tune it out, oh yeah, I'm hearing somebody talk, but I'm not really paying attention to what they're saying, right?
Yeah.
My mom. I'm thinking about my dad today as well because both my parents have since passed away, and it's my dad's birthday today. And so I've been thinking a lot about my family. I always do, but, especially today. And I remember my mom saying, who had a severe hearing loss, and finally she got hearing aids because she was resistant for many, many years about that. And, she would say to me, honey, I might not be able to hear, but your father, he doesn't listen. And she really made the distinction between hearing and listening. Now, my father begged to differ on that, right?
Yeah.
But it just was so funny in terms of their dynamic. Married for 53 years, blissfully in love. I grew up blessed in a wonderful family, and Italian family, might I tag on. But yeah, there's a big difference between hearing and listening.
I love that you said that because you know what? It is so true. My kids always comment on stuff like that too. How come you're just tuning us out? I'm like, because I just don't want to listen right now.
Oh, it's so true.
We do that select at times. When I need to be present, I'm present, but when I just don't want to hear the natter, I completely tune my kids out, and they always get a kick out of it.
Yeah, I think that my mom did that on some level with me. I think that that I have a hard time taking no for an answer. I believe we can facilitate any change as long as we're willing to put the work in to do it. And, my mom would say that I was the why kid. Well, why do we have to do it that way? Why can't we do it a different way? Or, well, you're telling me no on this, but, could we do this, and this? And so, finally she would just use the words, I'm 60 years old, and, I grew up in children are seen and not heard, right? And my mom would just look at me, and I'd say, well, why do we have to do it that way? Because I said so, and we're done, right? After the banter going back and forth. But I will tell you, I was listening to what she was saying, right? And my brain was constantly processing information to move to the next thing. And in retrospect, in fact, this was one of the last things my mom said to me before she passed away. She said, honey, it's been so wonderful to get to know how you think and the adult you've become because you focus on solutions. You don't focus on problems. And I think we have a lot of problems in the workplace with people not feeling successful and also not really knowing what their employers want, right?
Yeah.
It's not always visible. Part of my job in education is to make the invisible of education visible to all kids. And I think we need to do that in the workplace as well. And it's time well spent because then you get better performance and better engagement from your employees.
That is something that we need to get out there. So let's talk about some steps. Because we do have a lot of people that listen to our program that do own businesses. And it's definitely something that has come up on topics that, I just don't understand this employee. There's always that communication thing. So let's start. What kind of steps can we use to help some of these individuals out there?
Yeah, so many times employers will assign tasks to employees, right? That's kind of how the workplace works. And let's do an example that's pretty common in the business world. Many businesses have their employees write proposals in some form or another, and one of the very first steps of the learn, read, write, talk, we're going to go into the first phase of learn, is how does your company even define what a proposal is, right? Because employees are not mind readers. We need to say, this is what's important to us as a company. These are the key elements of a written pitch that this company is looking for. And we know that when you're trying to suggest something, whether it's in a written form like a proposal or just even at a meeting, for example, that proposals really take a lot of forethought. And so companies need to outline what is the thinking process, the planning, the prioritizing, so that you will get a yes. Because then employees know, just like I said in the beginning of our conversation, I'm happy to follow the rules if you just outline for me what they are, right? So this is what we're looking for. And this is the learn about phase. And it's, with the example of the proposal, it is critical for companies to link then, for example, proposal writing to the company's belief system, because it has to match up, especially if you are the owner of a company. Now, I own 2 companies, and under that entrepreneurial umbrella, I have a belief system that my companies are grounded in, and anyone who does work with, for, or contracted with my companies, they need to know what's important to Phyl Macomber. They need to know what the guidelines are. These are have-tos. These are not choices, because it stems from your belief system. And,
yes.
Doesn't that get every employee on the right point A, Candace? Like, it's the right yellow brick road, right? Like, so you're just automatically just saying to people, this is our philosophy here. And then you move them to the next phase. So it's not that hard, like with the example with the proposals, what's important to us as a company and how we represent ourselves. Like, don't put something in front of me if you know it doesn't tie to the belief system of our company, right?
Well, and I like that, because this is something that when you're hiring a person, this is something that you should be explaining to them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, that's a hire, not hired type of criteria, right?
Yeah.
And then you
don't want somebody that's not going to fit in with your philosophy to be working with you anyways.
Correct. And then you move on to the read about phase. Related to the proposal example I gave, like companies then need to gather samples of out-of-the-park proposals that previous employees wrote. Example, but with a purpose. You just don't pass these things out and fly little birdie, read through them. I feel like we need to dissect them and say, these are the components that make this a strong proposal. And then sometimes, in order to teach something, you need to do it in a compare-contrast. So it's always helpful to show what you're not looking for. And here's some examples of weak proposals. And it's missing this, and this. So strong versus weak. And we know, back to the brain, that if we teach in a comparative model like that, the brain absorbs information much better. Like Candace, you are a wonderfully warm-hearted person. However, you have also experienced other emotions in life. Like, you can truly appreciate true happiness because you've experienced deep sadness. That's a compare-contrast, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think we need to do a compare-contrast when diving in deeper for doing anything. But related to this proposal example, that's a great way to train staff and say, not only is this our company belief system and these are the important components of a proposal, but here's some examples of proposals that didn't hit it out of the park, and here's why. Yeah. And then obviously the writing part, the learn, read, write, third phase is they actually write a proposal based on something that they want to pitch you, and then go to the power of the spoken word and then present it in the talk about phase. Because oftentimes you're not just turning something in. You're usually standing in front of people trying to pitch your proposal. And to me, that's the cherry on the sundae. And, companies should also highlight what they're looking for in a proposal presentation when they're pitching to their department head, their upper mid-management, or even like higher up. And, you might be thinking, Candace, and maybe some of our listeners might be thinking, like, shouldn't these people in positions have learned this already in their education? Well, of course they did. If they were in business school or a business major or, in working for a book publisher or, whatever it is, they might have that information, but it's in a dusty file in the back of their brain. And more importantly, like I said before, employees are not mind readers. Company philosophies differ from company to company, and companies need to be really explicit in what they're looking for. And just this proposal example, I thought, was a nice way to kind of say it's not very complicated. Learn, read, write, talk. Set people up for success. And again, I think you're going to get better work performance and motivation using this kind of model.
So how do you help these companies? So if we've got some companies that are listening to us today, how can you help them out? Can they get in contact with you? How will that work out?
Oh, yeah, they absolutely can get in contact with me. Typically that would come from department heads, mid-management, or even higher up, like I said. CEOs, could contact me, and we could do a variety of things. I always say hone in on a focus. Like I gave you an example of a focus just because I've been involved in this whole proposal writing thing. I've also been involved with, department or company-wide meetings and how to get better buy-in from staff. And let's actually train a simple 4-step model for staff feeling like their opinion counts more, because we know people are resistant to change. Well, how can you set it up that you're not going to get a lot of pushback in your company for the changes that you believe really need to happen? So my website is aboutthepact.com. That's about, A-B-O-U-T, the, T-H-E, pact, P-A-C-T.com. And the pact is the acronym that houses the 4 steps, the learn about, read about, write about, talk about. And like I said, this is not just an educational initiative. This really is anyone who needs to learn and then be successful, whether you're a student or an employee, can benefit from using this model.
Thank you so much. For all of our listeners, we're going to be doing a 2-part series in regards to learning a lot about this, and I'm really excited that Phyl is going to be coming back on our program here in May. Phyl, is there any last-minute things? I know our show went really quickly today. There was so much to talk about in a very short period of time. Is there any last-minute things you want to share with our listeners?
Last-minute things. Do I have time to just give a quick example, another example that I mentioned, or should we save that for our next show?
Let's save that one for our next one so that we can get our amazing listeners to be excited about that.
Okay, that sounds great. I think that what I'd love to leave your listeners with is that in order for people to achieve their potential, they really need 2 things. They need explicit instruction so that you teach them what they need to know. And then secondly, they need your belief in them. Those are 2 really important things. And so one of that is based on knowledge. You need to give them the knowledge, but then you also need to give them the self-confidence and the belief that they can do it. And by breaking it down in bite-sized chunks, that's the secret solution.
That is wonderful, and that gives them the confidence to do everything that they can do, and I love that. Thank you so much, Phyl, for coming on to today's program. I loved it. I'm going to be sharing, for all of our listeners, I'm going to be sharing all of Phil's information on our social media links so that you can check it out also. I know that our call goes very quickly, and it's always so much information to take in a short period of time, so I will be posting her amazing website here so that you can check that out and you can get a hold of her. But again, we are going to be having Phyl back on our program in May, so you'll want to check that out also. Thank you, Phyl, my amazing friend, for coming on my program today. It was a pleasure having you.
Oh, it is my pleasure, and also I'm so grateful that our paths have crossed, Candace, and I so believe in the work that you're doing and the message that you're putting out, and I truly am honored to be a part of that.
Oh, thank you so much. And that's what I think I love about the Divas That Care the most, is that I've had the amazing opportunity to collaborate and get to know women like yourself. And I would never have been able to do that if it wasn't for this program. So I thank you so much. I'm so grateful to have you in my life. I'm grateful for the connections we have made, and through that, We've had other friends in common, and it's just been a great time. So thank you for coming on my program and for being a part of the Divas That Care tribe.
Oh, it's such a privilege, and thank you as well. And I look forward to our part 2.
Yay, me too. All right. Well, and thank you to all of our listeners. That's what the Divas That Care is all about, is, connecting with amazing individuals out there that are really changing the world, changing our thought process and making us open our minds to possibilities that we never even thought were possible. And make sure that you check out all of our other hosts, all of our other guests. We have so many guests that we've able to have on our program in the last 12 years. You want to go check them out. They're just so amazing, inspiring, empowering, and we'd love you to connect with them. You can check them all out at divasthatcare.com. So thank you again. Make sure that you guys do something kind today. Until next time, everyone.
Thanks for listening. This show was brought to you by Divas That Care. Connect with us on Facebook, on Instagram, and of course on divasthatcare.com, where you can subscribe to our newsletter so you don't miss a thing.